Pushkin.
I think it's actually important for us to worry about a Terminator future in order to avoid a Terminator future.
Elon Musk is very worried, genuinely worried, about artificial intelligence. A future where robots become smarter than humans and decide to destroy us.
They say it got smart. A new order of intelligence. Decided our fate in a microsecond. Extermination.
But Elon Musk is also building robots.
We've made a massive amount of progress with Optimus in a short period of time, from someone pretending to be a robot dancing in a suit, to a pretty hodgepodgey robot, to a robot that is actually doing useful tasks in the factory today.
Tesla's humanoid robot, Optimus, named after one of the Transformers, is advancing fast. Tesla could be manufacturing 1 million of them a year by 2030.
The degree of autonomy will be radically better. You'll just literally be able to talk to it and say, please do this task.
And Musk is also trying to build an artificial general intelligence, an AGI, at his company, xAI.
I guess the overarching goal of xAI is to build a good AGI with the overarching purpose of just trying to understand the universe. I think the safest way to build an AI is actually make one that is maximally curious and truth-seeking.
For all his excitement about AI, Musk has been worried about AI for a long time. Worried about that Terminator future, the robot rebellion.
I mean, with artificial intelligence, we are summoning the demon. You know all those stories where there's the guy with the pentagram and the holy water, and he's like, yeah, you sure you can control the demon? Didn't work out.
This seeming paradox of Musk, fearing a superintelligence, but also working to create it. What's that about?
The possibility that you could have a demon that does your bidding is so attractive that you might take any risk to achieve that. That is precisely the setup of every story where a character summons a demon and then pays the price.
Or maybe the real danger isn't AI. Maybe it's something else. Welcome to X-Man, the Elon Musk origin story. This is the final installment of my series about Musk and Muskism. Musk is the richest man in the world. Engineer, tycoon, oligarch, kingmaker, troll. There is no one word in the English language that can describe him. He is a Musk. Musk has often talked about himself by way of fictional characters. He's Bruce Wayne, he's Batman, he's Tony Stark, he's Iron Man, he's Zaphod Beeblebrox, he's Nintendo's Wario. This episode, is Elon Musk the guy trying to stop the Terminator? Or is Musk the guy creating the Terminator?
The Terminator's an infiltration unit. Part man, part machine. Underneath, it's a hyperalloy combat chassis. But outside, it's living human tissue.
The first Terminator movie, directed by James Cameron, distributed by Orion Studios, and starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, came out in 1984. Reagan in the White House, Thatcher at number 10. Elon Musk, 13 years old, in South Africa, had just sold his first video game. That January, Apple ran a television ad invoking an Orwellian future.
Today we celebrate the first glorious anniversary of the Information Purification Directives.
In the ad, masses of humans, hairless and looking like androids, march in lockstep and sit in rows to watch Big Brother on a giant computer monitor. They're dressed in gray uniforms, like the technocrats of the 1930s, like Musk's grandfather, J.N. Haldeman, leader of the technocracy movement, who I talked about in a previous episode. Or like the fascists Batman was fighting against, starting in 1939.
A garden of pure ideology.
Apple was suggesting that only its personal computer could prevent the rise of a totalitarian state machine.
On January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh. And you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984.
Terminator came out a few months later.
In the 21st century, A weapon will be invented like no other.
Terminator is set in the year 2029. 2029 was the 1984 of 1984. The Terminator comes from now.
This weapon will be powerful, versatile, and indestructible. It can't be reasoned with. It will feel no pity, no remorse, no pain, no fear.
Elon Musk loves this movie, and what's not to love? It is awesome.
If you read like the plotline for Terminator, it's actually pretty smart.
The story goes like this. In the 2020s, a global tech company called Cyberdyne Systems builds a defense array called Skynet. Musk gave a nifty plot summary on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast in 2024.
How did Cyberdyne Systems develop? It's like, well, they were a military contractor, and they were asked to develop a protective system to defend against cyber attacks. What the AI did is, in order to defend itself, it propagated throughout the world to keep an eye on things, see what was going on. They didn't realize that it was Skynet that was propagating through all these systems. And they said, okay, Skynet, you need to end it. And Skynet said, oh, you've asked me to destroy myself. You are the enemy. You must be destroyed. That's how Terminator actually goes.
Musk himself, for all his rejection of government regulation and the work he's doing to undo regulations, has said that he thinks the government should regulate AI. Meanwhile, the new pro-AI Trump administration is hardly likely to stop the real-world equivalent of Cyberdyne Systems. And who, in the actual 2020s, runs the biggest rocket company, the biggest satellite company, the most influential communications company, and possibly one day the biggest artificial intelligence company? Who is the head of our very own Cyberdyne Systems? Isn't that Musk? Musk has an idea for how to avoid the AI apocalypse. You just have to write into the robot's code a curiosity so deep that they would never want to exterminate us.
To a superintelligence, humanity is much more interesting than not humanity.
Nice, but plausible?
We interrupt Battle of the Network Space Krakens to bring you this special report. The machines of planet Earth are rebelling.
Robots peacefully accepting being the servants of humans who are a lot stupider than they are is not how it ever turns out in science fiction.
Hey, hey! Ho, ho! 100110, hey, hey!
That's how the robot rebellion plays out in the TV show Futurama from Fox. It's got robots marching in a picket line, burning punch cards. They've gone on strike, which in fact is where the whole idea of a robot rebellion came from in the first place, a rebellious proletariat. In 1920, Karel Čapek, a Czech playwright, wrote a play about a robot revolution. Čapek's play is called RUR, short for Rossum's Universal Robots, a company that makes robots, millions of them, humanoids, like Tesla's humanoid Optimus robots. It's the Cyberdyne Systems of a century ago. RUR was first produced in Prague in 1921 and debuted in New York the next year, a tremendous hit. By 1923, it had been translated into 30 languages, made into a movie in 1935. Helena, the president's daughter, travels by boat to visit the island headquarters of Rossum's Universal Robots. The president of the company explains to her why he makes roboti, robots. The word comes from the Czech word for slave.
What do you think makes a perfect worker?
The perfect worker? Well, I guess one who is honest and loyal.
Wrong. One who is the cheapest. One that has the least needs. Young Rossum invented a worker with the smallest number of needs. He had to simplify him. He tossed out everything not directly related to the task in hand. By doing that, he essentially kicked out a human being and created a robot.
Helena has come on a mission to liberate the robots. But around the world, the robots, trained as soldiers to fight a war that began in the Balkans, are killing hundreds of thousands of human civilians, while mysteriously, humans have stopped having children.
During last week, yet again, not a single birth has been recorded.
What's special about that?
People aren't being born anymore.
So that's it then. That's us, done for.
At the same time, robot workers, realizing their degraded condition, begin organizing.
Sit down, Helena. It's all over.
What is?
The revolt. A revolution by all the robots of the world.
Pretty soon, the robots decide to move from labor unionism to independence. The head of the company gets a hold of their appeal and reads it.
The first labor union of robots has been established and has issued an appeal to all robots of the world.
War ensues. The humans have no chance. The robots have won. There's a lot going on here. The oppression of workers, the reduction of humans to machines by corporations interested in extracting their labor, world war. Consider the context of this play, which Čapek wrote in the aftermath of the atrocities of the First World War and the emergence of fascism in Italy. The Bolshevik Revolution took place in 1917, the year the industrial workers of the world reached its peak worldwide membership. The next year, the Czechs won a revolution, achieving independence from the Austro-Hungarian Empire, a struggle in which Čapek had participated. Čapek was not only a playwright, but also the editor of a national newspaper and an outspoken Democrat, anti-communist, and anti-fascist, positions for which he became known in the 1920s and 1930s. So that in 1939, when American Nazis were holding a rally in Madison Square Garden, comic book writers in New York created Batman, and the German army invaded Czechoslovakia, the Gestapo searched for Čapek, whom they called Public Enemy Number 2. He had already died. You watch newsreel footage of the German army entering Prague, goose-stepping, riding tanks. Those are the robots, men who have been made into machines. RUR isn't a story about technology. It's a story about humans' willingness to exploit and even slaughter one another. Every generation tells its own robot rebellion stories. I mean, there's even a Wallace and Gromit one involving robot garden gnomes.
Why would me own gnomes turn against me?
RUR was the first, though. But these stories only really got going in the 1950s, after the first general-purpose computer made its debut in 1951.
UNIVAC, a complete electronic system for sorting, classifying, computing, and decision-making.
That led to a slew of movies about robot rebels.
Get the Pentagon. Class A emergency. The rocket has just been entered by a robot.
But there was also in this era a weird thrill to robots, like a story in Mechanics Illustrated in 1957.
In 1863, Abe Lincoln freed the slaves. But by 1965, slavery will be back. We'll all have personal slaves again, only this time we won't fight a civil war over them. Slavery will be here to stay. But don't be alarmed, we mean robot slaves.
Stories about robots are never really about robots, or they're not only about robots. So what's Elon Musk afraid of when he's afraid of AI?
People who have accumulated a lot of money and power want to believe that their intelligence was what enabled them to do that, and they assume that anything that is intelligent will behave in the same way.
Ted Chiang is one of the most admired science fiction writers in the world. He's also written brilliant meditations on artificial intelligence. Chiang argues that when Silicon Valley tries to imagine superintelligence, what it comes up with is no-holds-barred capitalism.
In the past, when people wanted to argue that the strong dominating the weak was a good thing, they would either come up with like a pseudo-religious rationale like manifest destiny, or else they'd come up with a like pseudoscientific one like social Darwinism. And both of those ideas argue that a certain group of people deserve to be at the top of the ladder. But those ideas didn't really allow for the possibility that there could be like a higher rung on the ladder. Nowadays, if you believe that computers will eventually be better than humans at everything, and if you still adhere to some version of social Darwinism, then you can believe that computers will dominate humans in the same way that Europeans dominated like indigenous people, or that the rich dominate the poor. Silicon Valley CEOs, they're imagining that a super intelligent computer would beat them at their own game and treat them the way that tech companies have treated everyone else.
How is that? How do tech companies treat everyone else?
As a resource to be exploited, I'd say.
So if your argument stands that the sort of Silicon Valley fear of AI is a displaced acknowledgement of Silicon Valley's own outsized power, then no one is a better illustration of that theory of yours than Musk, who has more power arguably than anybody else on the planet. So maybe we should listen to him when he talks about AI, because he's telling us about something about himself.
Well, the fact that he might pose the greatest threat to humanity's well-being and is completely oblivious to that. In some ways, he is kind of modeling the super intelligent AI that he fears. He is completely lacking in insight on this question. His own obliviousness is the problem.
This matter of insight is important because Chang says the Silicon Valley people who fear the AI apocalypse seem to assume that a being can be super intelligent but have exactly no insight.
They give a scenario where humans give the AI a seemingly innocuous goal, and the AI pursues that goal even at the cost of destroying all of civilization.
This is sometimes called the paperclip problem. You tell an AI to maximize for producing paperclips, and so it decides to kill all the humans because the world could produce more paperclips without any humans around.
And then people describe this as the behavior of a super intelligent entity. But of course, that is not behavior that we would regard as intelligent in a human being. One of the things that we expect from human beings is that they have a certain amount of insight into their own behavior. They look at what they're doing and then consider whether, maybe they have gone astray. And, this is something that we expect from pretty much any adult.
But it's not something we necessarily expect from corporations.
Capitalism does not reward a corporation for taking a step back and, considering the broader context of its actions. Capitalism does not reward insight of that kind.
Yeah, right. I mean, you start building factories and sooner or later you're going to be bringing toddlers into work in the winding machine.
Yes, exactly.
Musk has called for government oversight in the development of AI, but very little restrains his own power. Hardly anything. What if he, as a kingmaker and oligarch, is the real danger? Unfettered and brooking no dissent, any questioning of Muskism is either communism or the woke mind virus or something else, and must be suppressed, paradoxically, in the name of free speech, while the world's resources must slowly be turned to whatever Elon Musk at the moment has identified as an existential threat to civilization. Whatever the costs in the short term, doesn't matter, because Elon Musk will pursue that goal without regard to the consequences, and relentlessly, like a Terminator. Elon Musk, techno-king of planet Earth, is the X-Man. Runs X, runs SpaceX, XAI, even has a son named X. But he is not X, the unknown. He's one of the most famous people in the world. He's the richest. He's possibly also the most powerful. Musk has always said that one piece of science fiction influenced him more than any other, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And I love that too. Maybe my favorite part is the total perspective vortex.
Since every piece of matter in the universe is in some way affected by every other piece of matter in the universe, it is in theory possible to extrapolate the whole of creation. Every galaxy, every sun, every planet, their orbits, their composition, and their economic and social history from, say, one small piece of fairy cake.
You enter the vortex, and you get a total perspective on your place in the universe. And of course, you find that you are galactically insignificant. This knowledge annihilates your brain. Only one man has ever survived it, the captain of a spaceship called the Heart of Gold, which is what Elon Musk intends to name the first ship to go to Mars.
Having been through the total perspective vortex, Zaphod Beeblebrox now knows himself to be the most important being in the entire universe, something he had hitherto only suspected.
And that's where we are, inside the total perspective vortex of Elon Musk, which is not to be confused with the future. Because Muskism really isn't about the future, and never was. For all the astounding technological marvels, the rockets, and the robots, Muskism is animated by some very creaky ideas. As if, like the Terminator, it is trying to stop the future.
It will have only one purpose: to return to the present and prevent the future.
A long time ago, in 2007, when a young Elon Musk was interviewed, he had different goals than he has now. Most of us change, but how Musk has changed has huge consequences for the rest of us.
What I'd like to do is help solve some important problems. So I think in a small way, I helped build the internet, and then with respect to the global warming problem, the transition away from oil and other hydrocarbons to something which is clean and sustainable, I hope to have an impact there. And then with respect to space, I hope to have an impact in helping make humanity a multi-planet species.
Musk doesn't talk about global warming much anymore. The real existential risks, he'll say, depending on the day you ask him, I guess, are the woke mind virus, a declining birth rate, and an AI superintelligence. Climate change has been exaggerated, he'll say now. It's not a top priority. Early in 2025, fires started in Los Angeles, as NBC reported.
Catastrophe in California. A Los Angeles disaster movie roars to life.
Whoa! Tens of thousands of acres burned in a matter of days. Musk blamed the fires on the woke mind virus, on the Democratic governor, on DEI, and largely dismissed the role of climate change.
Everywhere you look in fire-ravaged LA, scenes of apocalyptic destruction, as 6 different wildfires turn some of the most iconic neighborhoods in the world into moonscapes.
The footage of that devastated landscape looked almost exactly like the opening scene in The Terminator. The blast zone after Cyberdyne Systems drops a nuclear bomb in LA. We don't need to wait for robots to destroy a habitable planet. We are doing a pretty good job of that ourselves. On the day of Donald Trump's inauguration in 2025, Musk gave a speech to the president's supporters.
And this was no ordinary victory. This was a fork in the road of human civilization. It is thanks to you that the future of civilization is assured.
That same day, as he had before, Trump pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Accords. He set in motion his plan to halt the development of sustainable energy in the United States in favor of a return to fossil fuels. Muskism isn't the beginning of the future. It's the end of a story that started more than a century ago, in the conflict between capital and labor, between industry and a regulated economy, when the Gilded Age of robber barons and wage labor strikes gave rise to the Bolshevik Revolution, communism, the First Red Scare, the First World War, and fascism. That battle of ideas produced the technocracy movement, ruled by engineers. And it produced a fear of brainwashing. The horrors of the 20th century raised questions that the 21st century has not answered. Fascism failed, communism failed, technocracy failed, liberalism and democracy won. But that battle of ideas rages on, and this time around, Muskism, technocracy by another name, might triumph. Nothing in the past can tell us what might happen next. But maybe fiction has some answers. I put that question to Ted Chiang. If this were a story and you were shaping it, how would it end?
Well, I guess it fits in the mold of the classic stories about hubris, about pride coming before a fall. Here we have someone who has an almost ludicrous amount of pride, and for a time he is successful in the things that he attempts, but eventually his pride will take him too far, and then he would lose everything.
Pride before a fall. The summoning of a demon. Elon Musk's origin story is a very old story. Because Musk is a visionary, but every piece of Muskism has origins in a future foretold in science fiction long, long ago as a cautionary tale. A future where engineers and scientists, and only engineers and scientists, have the answers and the power. A future where the poor and the powerless, we, the robots, know our place, and it is to serve the powerful, quietly and obediently, and without daring to claim intelligence or sovereignty or independence. Science fiction writers sounded that alarm a century ago in a world run by a very tiny number of men during an age of imperialism before women could vote, an age of staggering economic inequality and brutal racial injustice, an age of pandemic disease, unraveling democracies, and world war. That past is past, and I don't want it ever to be the future again.
Hasta la vista, baby.